Hey, my name is Steve Moreland, and I want to welcome you to the authority effect. And this particular explanation and slide presentation is about the science that moves us from the guesswork of how do we figure out how to work with other individuals and solve their problems, why that isn't happening, and how we can go from being the grinder that we talked about to becoming the rainmaker that you've seen in some of my other presentations. Matt spoke about this and why and how he became a rainmaker and changed everything in his life by adding the authority effect to it. So what I want to do is actually give you the science, whether or not we end up selecting you as an author in our program. We want to be able to give you this science, like Matt said, to be able to help you to impact other people's lives for good. And I want to show you the science. I want to show you why the science can hurt other people, which is the reason why Matt said we have to trust you, that we're giving you something dangerous here. But I want to more importantly show you the technology that expresses how you can help other people. But before we do that, I want to get into the focus of the question first to frame what we're getting ready to show you the scientific explanation of, and that is what allows some to effortlessly succeed while others work really hard, but they constantly struggle. Why the struggle? Why doesn't every customer buy from you when what you're offering solves their problem best? It makes no sense. I mean, we've gotten used to the answer, well, I just am only going to, be able to close so many people or do so many transactions or whatever. But follow me. Why do they end up doing business with someone else most of the time? There's no reason for that except for what we're going to show you. See, grinders make some money sometimes, but no money most of the time. They struggle way too hard for far too little results. And I know that that is one of the reasons, and it should be the reason while you're here trying to understand the science. But what about those rainmakers? See, we know that everyone that's on these programs are generally not rainmakers because rainmakers are too busy outside making money fall. So if you're not here as a rainmaker, you know these guys. They're absolutely crushing it. These ladies are always on top. They are what I would call, it doesn't matter the industry, the economy, the company, the service, the product, they always rise to the top of the game. It doesn't matter what's going on, they're always making money rain. In this quick presentation, and I'm going to keep it to less than 15 minutes, I want to give you a deep dive into the psychological trigger that separates grinders from rainmakers. And there is just one, yes, only one, and it is the reason that you struggle. This transformational science means going from being irrelevant and being ignored way too often, being just another face in the crowd, and suffering from that constant level of rejection that I know every day you're tired of. And it takes you to becoming someone that is respected, admired, accomplished, revered, sought after, and most importantly, trusted. The simple but profound question is this: how do people perceive you? And maybe a better way to say it is, what is it costing you to continue not managing how others think about you? See, as long as you stay a grinder and you leave everything up to chance, you're not managing this key specific reason why you're struggling. See, decisions are not random. I don't care what someone wants to say. There's too much science behind this. There is a reason why you're struggling and rainmakers don't. Like we talked about, it doesn't matter the industry, the economy, the product, the service, the company, they're always at the top and you're not. So this is going to take away that mystery that you've always been wondering, but decisions are not random. Here's the explanation. Plain and simple, consumers will not follow your advice unless they perceive you to be an authority, period. That's how it is. That's what the authority effect is. The reason why people don't buy from you, why they don't do business with you, why they don't take your advice is because they don't see you as an authority. The science of authority is about perception. Rainmakers create how others perceive them. Whether that's consciously or unconsciously, they still do it. But they don't leave perception, this very important element, to chance. So what is the authority effect? It is a proven scientific method that quietly shouts that you are an expert authority. When perceived as an authority, you gain an unfair advantage to do what? Automatically influence and instantly persuade. The science that you've been looking for, 5 decades of it, is right here with the research. It starts at Yale in the 1960s with a social psychologist by the name of Dr. Stanley Milgram. It's known as the Milgram experiment. And basically, the premise of this was 1 and maximum 3% of the population they believed as social psychologists would continue to cause harm on other humans on a repeated basis unless they were a sociopath. So that's what they're basically saying. 1% of the population is sociopaths. Everybody else is going to start hurting someone else as they continue to see that they're causing the pain. So what they did is they built an experiment. They built a one-way window. They put one person on one side of the window and hooked them up to electrodes that would shock them at ever-increasing shocks. So it starts off mild, and then it continues to get more and more until the actual person that was being shot was screaming. On the other side, they put a normal person, and they gave them a button, and they continued to press the button on intervals, and as they were pressing, they heard the person on the other side continuing to scream louder and louder. When they wanted to stop, 65% did not follow their ethics or even their morals, because there was a person standing next to them that was described as an authority to them that simply told them to continue, that this was the version of the experiment. So they went past their good sense, and 65% time, way more than half, basically continued to do a wrong action simply because an authority told them. So what was the authority effect? Well, what Dr. Milgram was able to conclude is that we obey authority automatically, and we do this because of how we are raised, that we're taught to obey authority, to obey adults, to obey those in charge. And as we move into adulthood, that just becomes the structure of our society. And what it is, it's just become an automatic mental shortcut that helps us make decisions faster and generally better because it's automatic, because we don't have to go through every single criteria going through decision. We just label somebody as an expert and they become the authority, and we follow what they say without even thinking about it. So the authority effect is built up of symbols called triggers, and these triggers cause the automatic and often unconscious obedience. So what are these things that trigger influence? They come in 3 categories: titles, dress, and status symbols. Titles is everything from a doctor, an author, a general, anything like that automatically frames someone as a person of authority. Dress, what do you look like in your business suit? What happens when someone walks up in a uniform, whether it's military or law enforcement? People automatically obey. And status symbol, people look at your level of status or success to decide whether or not they should automatically follow you as an authority figure. If you pull up in a Mercedes or a Rolls Royce, or if you're wearing a $40,000 diamond bezel Mariner Rolex, or if you're carrying a Prada handbag, blah, 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 that sets our automatic unconscious obedience factor, and that is what the authority effect is about. Now, in 1971, Dr. Phillip Zimbardo followed Dr. Stanley Milgram's work at Yale and at Stanford University, where he was actually a psychologist, professor emeritus at the Stanford University, and they went out and recruited very healthy, very bright Stanford college undergrads and brought them into a basement that they had built into a mock jail prison environment. And they randomly, what would you say, mixed them up. Some of them became guards, other ones became prisoners or inmates. And they ended up finding out that a lot of the guards began torturing, both psychologically and physically, the inmates in a period of time, and it went on to create an entire movie and so forth. But here's the most important thing that we concluded, that Matt concluded from this, is not just that authority can be used wrongly and that unfortunately human beings tend to torture people that can't fight back. What's more important is specifically that we can't distinguish when an authority presence is around us between a mock environment and a reality. So these individuals, the reason why they had to stop the Stanford Prison Project early is because these individuals were having nervous and mental breakdowns. Even though it was a mock environment, even though it was an experiment, their mind could not comprehend it. And so they were actually falling apart. They had to cancel the program. And now Dr. Zimbardo has written several other books looking back 20, 30, 40 years in arrears, and actually was an expert witness at the Abu Ghraib military trials because of his expertise and what he learned here. And that is that people can't distinguish between reality and a mock environment. That's how powerful authority figures are. So now that we know how this can be used for wrong, how about we learn how it can be used for right, for good? See, as we mentioned before, you have an obligation to influence people, to persuade them to be able to allow your product and your service and your consultation to solve their pain problem. That is why they have come to you. And if you are not influencing them to help them see that your product or service has the ability to solve their pain, then you are actually doing the greatest disservice. So here we're dealing with Dr. Robert Cialdini, and he's been written up in Harvard Business Review, New York Times, Fortune Magazine, CEO Read, and he launched his book in 1984, and it has become the basis of many business school, B schools across the United States and the world. So here he is being interviewed, as he was many times, by Larry King, and he got his PhD from Columbia, his undergrad from North Carolina. He has been the acting Regents Professor Emeritus of Psychology and Marketing at Arizona State University. But look at his list of clients, and this is just a partial list. They are the who's who of business and government, even NATO. And so what are these individuals and groups coming to this expert to tell them? It's that he understands why people make decisions, why they act, and why they don't act. And very simply, there are 6 shortcuts. And the most important thing that has the most power is number 3, authority. It has the ability to influence and persuade in a very dramatic way, following the research by Dr. Zimbardo and by Dr. Stanley Milgram. And here's what he found in the authority is 2 categories that people are looking for that allow them to be instantly persuaded and automatically influenced by authority, and that is expertise and trustworthiness. Expertise is people want to know what you've done, and they want to know what your relevant knowledge is to your key of expertise. They want to know why your expertise can solve their problems. They're looking for that special experience. And trustworthiness, people want to know they can be able to trust you, and the answer to being able to trust you is based on why people perceive you do what you do. So when someone becomes an author, they have the opportunity to express why they are trustworthy and why their expertise is in the form of a chapter, in the framework of a book, and that becoming an author then sets them on a pedestal and gives them that authority because people are looking to hear your voice so they can know someone that can solve their pain problem. Now, for just a moment, I want you to pause and let everything that you've just learned about the authority effect really sink in. See, grinders spin their wheels doing more of what has never worked, but they expect different results. And Albert Einstein and I think a couple other people throughout history have defined this as insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. See, because the research proved the exact opposite to what everyone believed before the experiments of Dr. Milgram, Dr. Zimbardo, and 30 years of ongoing research from Dr. Cialdini, it is basically contrarian or contrary to what common beliefs are, that our default to obey authority is so powerful. But what we've shown you here is that this is science, this is not guesswork. So here is Matt again, going back to showing you what changed his career, the critical thing that changed the trajectory from making good 6-figure income to jumping to a 7-figure income. And what he found is there's no other way to gain authority faster or easier. And now we have over 100 other authors that have followed Matt's similar program and have similar results. So how others have used this authority to end their grinding, I want to give you 3 main examples outside of me. Suze Orman. If you don't know who Suze Orman is, don't know how that could happen, but She has basically been an insurance salesman, is where she started off working for Prudential in the late 80s, early 90s. And in 1997, she did this very important thing, and that is she wrote her first book, The 9 Steps to Financial Freedom. Within 5 years, Suze Orman had her own show on CNBC. And then after that, she became the author to Yahoo's Money Matters on their online website. And then after that was invited in to become an advice columnist for O Magazine, Oprah's magazine. And absolutely, now she is a household name. Now, what she was able to do on one of Oprah's shows is, this I think was 2008 or so, is she released one of her new books in an ebook format, and over 2 million downloads occurred within the next 24 hours. That's what the power of becoming an author can do for someone. Here's another guy, Robert Kiyosaki. If you don't have the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, got to add it to your library. Great story about how he observed how his father acted while he was growing up, and how he observed the actions and behavior of his best friend's father, and how he took the contrast between the two and became very wealthy in the real estate environment. Now, the authority that he was able to generate from becoming an author is what set him on the trajectory of what you see him standing next to is his own jet and a multi-million-dollar empire that continues to change and help people break their, what I would call, boundaries, or break the chains of financial debt and being less and moving to a position of more. As we already talked about, and if you, Matt mentioned the Chicken Soup for the Soul, here's Jack Canfield, and along with co-author Mark Victor Hansen in 1993-94, they co-authored Chicken Soup for the Soul. But what they did is they didn't write the book. They figured out that they could go out and find other people that had written just a story, and they could compile all of them together and create not just a book, but multiple books, 500 million copies in 40 languages. And now they have books written on specific subject matter, organized according to themes. Brilliant idea. Obviously, you know, this is the model that Matt tripped onto once he found the science and found that people can become authors simply by writing a chapter, not having to write an entire book. So basically, we have cracked the Rainmaker's Code. And the Rainmaker's Code is about the authority effect. It is a proven scientific method that quietly shouts that you are an expert authority. When perceived as that authority, you gain an unfair advantage to everyone else in your industry. To do what? To automatically influence and to instantly persuade, and to do so in an ethical fashion. To do so by changing people's lives, by bettering them, by solving their problems with your product or with your service. Now, there are 10,000 combinations of how this works. A lot of people want to try it on their own, and if you do, more power to you. It is a painstaking process, and as Matt related to you, he spent over a year writing an entire book and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars paying for it to be done and edited and going through the entire process that he went through. Or you can find a better and simpler way, but what we want to be able to do is give you this sign. Now that you understand it, you understand what we're about. We want to give you this magnificent gift. Research, look at this information, and even if we do not end up fitting together in a best fit environment, we want you to have this incredible gift to be able to impact other people for better, to better your family, and to better the world. I appreciate your time and your patience. Thanks for hanging out with me. Take care.